Good morning. Well, I thought today I'd look at a book that I wrote ages ago. In fact, as I think I put on the comments, um, this is I wrote it two houses ago. While I was still while I was still living in northeast England. On there. So it's been around a little while. But you see, the thing is, the front part of that book has changed a time or two. You see, it started by, well, the first version started off with a whole list of things that could possibly go wrong. Things like, well, uh, well, there were all sorts of things like problems with uh, fruit crops, like a virus that's been affecting bananas, and another one that's been affecting oranges. Um, all sorts of bits and pieces, things that were things that would actually, or there's so like the colony collapse disorder, which for pollinating bees, for bees that do the pollination, therefore causing problems to the crops. Um, the impact of solar flares, all sorts of things that could be an issue on there. So, what does um, what on earth there? But you see, when the last time I updated it, it was the end of 2020. In other words, about 18 months ago. And things have changed a bit. Things had changed a bit since then. We'd been through 2020 had actually taught us a few things about what could go wrong and the problems that we could be facing around us. Wasn't it? We'd never contemplated the reality that the government would make it illegal to get your hair cut. That had never crossed anybody's mind that that might be the case, or that it might be the case of um, a mum takes her child to hospital, and the child is what, and she wants to check, go and buy a change of pajamas for that child on there. So she just pops out to the local sort of supermarket where they sell children's clothes, goes to try and buy a pair of pajamas, and the shop says, "Sorry, we can't sell you any children's clothes because the government says we can't sell you them." We've had a few interesting stories in there, that things that we'd never have even dreamt of happening at one time. And I mean, the funny one that I remember from when they're saying about not buying clothes was not essential was the guy that went shopping in his boxer shorts um, as a protest. When the security guard stopped him, he said, well, the government says that clothes aren't essential, so I'm not, so I'm not wearing any. The security guard didn't know quite what to say about that one, and it created quite a fun video that was on social media for a while. But we've had some crazy things happen. We sort of 2020 taught us that things could go wrong, and things didn't always go to plan, to say the least. And those are the sort of things that spring to mind. And I'm sure you could think of a few more things from 2020, or even or 2021 even, that were equally as curious, strange, outrageous. Like the church authority, who the government says that you can't go on church properties. So the church says, so the dictate goes down from the church authorities. Right, right, minister, you have a door from your house into the church. You cannot go through that door, even to for your own personal devotions and go into the church for that, you have when there's nobody there, there's nobody there for weeks on end. You're not doing anybody any harm, but the government says you're not supposed to go in the building, so you do not go into the building, even if you can go in through your own, going through an internal door to the house, so you don't there and nobody knows you're in there. It is still wrong for you to do that because you're not obeying the letter of the law. I told you some crazy things happened in 2020. So we all know now that craziness can happen, and at the moment it looks as though there's more craziness on the horizon. I mean, people keep on talking about well, as I'm recording this, people talking about inflation. Yeah, I just looked at how much I bought some sugar last night. That sugar cost me 65 pence. It doesn't seem very long ago that I was buying two bags of sugar, the same size, same size, same quality of sugar, two for £1 or 50 pence each. So that's, and then now instead of now it's 1.30 for two instead of £1 for two. That's inflation for you. Oh, of course, and then there's the shrinkflation. Oh, you know what shrinkflation is, don't you? See, that's when I buy the same brand of shampoo that I bought a year or so ago, and it's the same price, but I stand it next to the bottle that I had that I bought last year, or I bought some time ago, and I looked at them and I'm thinking, oh, one's that tall and the other's that tall. That's shrinkflation. You pay the same amount, but the quantity that you're buying is there. So instead of £1 for 6 bread rolls, it's six bread rolls, it's £1 for 4 bread rolls. It's that kind of thing. It's sort of you get less, you're paying the same amount. It looks as though you're paying the same price for something, but you're actually getting less for your money. That's shrinkflation. Well, at least that's what they said that's what newspaper headlines I saw, and it's quite obvious that that's what they're doing. In fact, to be honest, those of us who remember inflation from a few years ago were rather know that that's an old tactic. Make it look the same instead of paying a larger amount for paying more money for a larger amount for the same amount, you make the packet smaller and you pay the same amount. Same effect, really. On there, that's what inflation does to you, and that's certainly what I'm seeing at the moment on there. And with the sugar, that one was very recent. And you never know. By the time you watch this video, sugar might be a different price altogether. You might be struggling to find sugar for 65 pence a kilo for white granulated sugar. You never know. Things might change completely. Anyway, so we all know that there's problems around, and there's problems all over the place. So one of these things about the manifesto is that it's not for wimps, is that I wrote it from the point of view of being a Christ follower who was looking at what the church should be doing to support the community within the community. I mean, what is the church's role in community on there? One of the passages that I looked at when I there was a strange one on there, not quite one you would expect, but it comes from Ezekiel. And the verse that I concentrated on in that in that book was Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 4. And I used a copyright free, slightly obscure translation to there. And the quotation goes, "The weak you have not strengthened, and that which was sick you have not healed. That which was broken you have not bound up. That which was driven away you have not brought again. Neither have you sought that which was lost, but you ruled over them with rigor and with a high hand." You see, that is Ezekiel complaining that the equivalent of the church of his day was not doing what it was supposed to be doing. It was saying that it wasn't strengthening people. It wasn't strengthening the weak. It wasn't healing the sick. Not binding up the broken. It was not bringing in the outcasts, and it wasn't looking for the lost. Ooh, that's not good. So, what I did in the book is I did a word search on this. I did a word study on it, and this is what I put in it. Strengthening the weak. Think of a pair of old jeans that you have worn into the holes at the knees, and you add a patch to them to strengthen them. I know that was written before these youngsters had this idea that jeans with holes in were actually fashionable. I mean, there was a time when jeans that had holes in was something that you patched over and you kept on wearing. Or at least it was when I was a teenager, but times change, don't they? That is the picture that is expressed in the original Hebrew. Something that has been rubbed or worn until it has been left weak. The word for weak here can also be translated as sick, i.e. to feel weak. Other words used include ill, sore, wounded, and even grieved. The word to strengthen is seen as meaning to be courageous, to be resolute, to be secure, to sustain, to encourage, to repair, to hold up, to withstand, and to make firm. So how do you strengthen the weak in modern day Britain? Well, one way in which the church has been doing that is that's the idea of the food banks on there. That's one way of strengthening the weak. But there are a lot of sore people around. There are a lot of wounded people around. There's a lot of people who are grieving for there. I mean, there are. I know some. Well, you think of somebody that decided that they were going to get married. There are still people who had made arrangements to get married and then had to cancel their wedding because of the COVID restrictions. And I know there are still people catching up with that. There was so many. There's it's actually quite difficult at the moment to find vacancies where you can get married in this, because there's so much of there's all the people who are doing it now who would get married normally, and all those who were stopped from getting married from months ago, some of whom have joined the queue. I mean, somebody was telling me that they'd applied to 2 or 3 different registry offices and to get married, and they said that the queue was so long that they were actually put on a waiting list in case somebody decided to cancel. And then they got married fairly quick, and then they ended up organizing things very quickly because they just had to jump in for the cancellation on there. That seems crazy to me on there. I mean, there's people sort of organizing things. I there's people who were planning a marriage in 2020 who still in the UK who still haven't been able to put their plans in place simply because of all the hassle that there's that there's been. Um, Somebody, a distant relative of mine, um, well, a relative on the other side of the family of a relative of mine, if you know what I mean. They are they were supposed to be getting married in 2020. They are finally going to be able to get married, this young couple, in the what's it, 2022, 2 years after they'd originally planned to get married, simply because of all the hassle that there has been. And to be honest, that is a good reason to be, you wonder why people are sore and wounded and grieved when situations like that, and that's just a relatively minor one. There's all sorts of things. So what does the church do to strengthen those who are weak, and to help those who are uh, ill, sore, wounded, and grieved, to be courageous, resolute, secure, sustained, encouraged, repaired, held up, withstood, and made firm? Um, yes, I'm not quite sure on that one. Uh, no, the next thing it says on that passage is about healing the sick. Healing is about mending, and in the original Hebrew, this is linked to stitching. The same word is used when talking about healing national hurts and personal distress. Healing national hurts involves restoring favour so things go better and there are fewer problems to deal with, and so on. Healing personal distress involves a physician or doctor or some medical person, and is often used in the context of being completely healed. The same word is used for sick as for weak. So something different is happening to them that mends or repairs their situation rather than just strengthening them. So this reminds me of the old idea of you've got somebody that's in a crisis situation, so you give them a fish. But the healing the sick bit is like giving them the fishing rod so that they can go fishing for themselves. It's actually doing something that is not just strengthening them, it's mending them and repairing them. And there, it's just sort of like it's the next step on, not just a not stand and be courageous, cope with it. The next step is mending them or repairing them. I wonder, how much is the church doing these days to mend and repair people in whatever situations? Don't take me wrong. I know there's some very good work being going on there, but personally, I've got a sneaking suspicion it is far more limited than it should be, for a variety of reasons. But I'll get onto that in future videos in the series. Binding up the broken is my next heading. I expect you, like me, first thought of broken bones when you read this, but the meaning goes further in the Hebrew. It means to be wrecked, to be crushed, to be quenched, to be maimed, to be crippled, or to be shattered. It's not just talking about broken bones, but broken hearts and even broken people. What about binding them? This talks about wrapping firmly, but why wrap something up? One idea is that wrapping is you wrap things up like you wrap a turban. So you wrap your cloth around your head as a protection against the desert sand. This kind of wrapping can also be used as a restraint or bandage or a compress. When you think of it, I think of a compress. If you've fallen over and sprained your ankle, one of the things it says, one of the sort of things you're supposed to do, ways of first aid for that, is you wrap it round with something cold to reduce the swelling. It's the old thing about get the packet of frozen peas out. Sacrifice a packet of frozen peas and stick it on the ankle and take the swelling down. Well, if you keep the peas in the packet, you can have them have them at a later date. But you know what I mean. You use the cold stuff on there. So that's one of the things it talks about there. But you see, this was broken bit. As I say in there, it doesn't just mean broken bones on there. The book goes on. One of the other meanings of the word broken is to have burst, and the idea is that someone has something wrapped around them to hold them together. That reminds me of the dog we had when I was a child. When she was spayed, the inner stitches dissolved too quickly. My mum asked them at the surgery what she should do if the wound burst open and her inside spilt out before the next surgery was scheduled. Because they stitch the muscles up and then they stitch the skin up. Well, the stitches in the muscles dissolved too quickly, and it wasn't enough to hold her insides together. It was only her skin that was holding her together, and there was some worry about the skin breaking. So they said, and my mum asked them at the surgery what she should do if the wound burst open and her inside spilt out before the next surgery was scheduled. She was told, scoop everything up, wrap her in a towel, and get her to them as fast as possible. Thankfully, that did not happen, so Mum did not have to bind up a broken dog. See, that's what I mean. That's the sort of healing. So when something is sort of like dealing with the inner brokenness, it's sort of so you're making them strong, you're stitching them up, and then you're dealing with the inside broken bits on there. And anybody that's sort of like dealt with inner healing and counselling will sort of recognise that of sort of working with pastoral care with there. You strengthen people, you stitch up the wounds that you can see, you deal with the wounds that you can't, you help them recover from the wounds that you can't see. And then the fourth thing it says that they've not been doing that they should have been doing is restoring the outcasts. Now, the Hebrew meaning here reflects the idea of changing direction, whether that is people turning towards God or away from Him. It could be that an enemy is turned away or repulsed. So you've got people that their job is to sort of change direction. So you get good people that are going away from you, then you turn them round and pull them towards you. And you've got bad things which are going on that you turn around and push away from people. And it's that kind of making that kind of change in there. You see, once people are strong enough to deal with those things, they can actually change direction. See, I've done that myself. I've been in difficult situations and people have said, oh, well, just do this and change direction and change your mind and transform and change direction. Well, the problem I found was I wasn't, because I was weak and needed healing and needed binding up. I didn't have the ability to turn around and stop being an outcast. I couldn't do it because I didn't have the strength. Telling me to do that on top of the weakness I was already experiencing, I didn't have the ability to do it. Things have changed now, and I've got people saying, oh, look, this is what you should be doing. This is a transformation you should be making. And, it's so much easier to do that once. Now I'm not as weak as I used to be. A lot of the sickness has been dealt with, or the inside inside bits have been bound up and are not going to fall out on there. So much easier to turn around and be and go the direction I should do once all that's dealt with. That's why I'm thinking this is a progression, really. And then once you've got the people, the outcasts turned around there, because they're actually they've actually got the strength to actually turn around and be restored. The next thing is that they actually get round to get a bit closer to you, and you're able to. The next step is seeking the lost. And the picture here is someone who's wandered into a wilderness and has got lost in the wilderness. They don't have what they need to survive, and as a result, they lose strength and eventually die. They are the people who have vanished or perished or been exterminated. The idea of seeking carries with it the idea of striving, and this includes a connotation of pursuing them and desiring that they return. So they've got strong enough to move in your direction, but now you've got to go out and encourage and bring them back into a safe place, and bring them back out of the wilderness and into a safe place. And I look at that one verse in the light of my experience. I'm thinking, how much of that have I actually experienced from a church context? Have I actually been failed by the church? And the sad thing is, as a Christ follower, I would say that there have been a number of times when I have been failed by the church, and that is what that is what that verse says on there. But then this morning I read the rest of the chapter to get that into context, and that rather surprised me. You see, I'm one of those who, the diseased and weak who have not strengthened. Well, that's been me at times. And the sick who have not healed. Well, that's been the church and me at times. Those who've gone astray. Well, you have sometimes that's not necessarily been the case. I mean, there was one particular span when for about nearly 20 years I was actually refusing to do what God wanted me to do for 20 years. But because, well, no, well, maybe not 20, certainly 18. Certainly from 88 to 2005, what was going wrong was the things that were going wrong in my life were because I wasn't doing what God asked me to do. I expected me to do. But the reason why I wasn't doing what God wanted me to do was the fact that I was doing what the church wanted me to do instead. Take a deep breath, girl. On there, they were saying that long story, too long. This video is too long to repeat that story now, but that is the truth from that is the way that I see things anyway, as to what happened. So those who are going out to not going out to seek the lost. Well, yes, there. I'm not. There's many times when I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I can stand in the marketplace, and I very often find that I can. I mean, well, actually, the Saturday before I recorded this, it was quite strange. I stopped to talk to somebody, and before very long, and I just sort of had this sense of there, and I didn't know them, never seen them before, and I just sort of had this sense that they were another Christ follower as well. And I know I'd never met this person on there, and I just sort of, it was just something about them. I'm not really quite sure, and I could actually sense that I could actually sense what they were. And when we got talking, I thought, yeah, I can understand that. I can, yes, we, it soon became obvious that, that they were. It sort of, somehow there was something about us that helped, something about them that helped me recognize them for what, for, well, for what they did on the Sunday, basically. Um, yeah, on there. And how many people actually see, how many people actually go to the marketplace, and I mean literally the marketplace, and do things either undercover or either covertly or overtly, in other words, undercover or obviously, to go out and seek the lost? I don't know of many, certainly not. I know that there are some, and I know that there are some people that do put a lot of work into doing that, and put a lot of work into training other people to do that. I know that, but I also know that I'm very, very much the minority. Certainly, the little bit of the marketplace that I'm in, and I mean a literal marketplace, on there. Um, I know from other people's, it's quite obvious from the conversations that I've had with the other traders in that part of the marketplace that, yes, that they are nowhere near, that they are definitely not, mm, many of them are not at peace with the Christian faith. Let's put it like that. On there, that's not their scene, so for want of a better phrase. So, like I said this morning, I looked at this passage, and it so reminded me of what I'm hearing various prophets say at the moment. It's saying that those sheep the sheep. Now, I mean, this is the sheep in the church. I mean, not necessarily the outside ones, the inside ones as well. The the shepherds are eating the fat and clothing themselves with the wool, and killing the fat, killing the fatted sheep, but they're not feeding them. Oh, that is one of my bugbears with the church these days. You see, I sat down and thought, I was confirmed in the mid 1970s. I underwent believer's baptism in a different denomination in the mid 80s. I have been around the church, I could say, as a what's that? So, best part of 50 years, and the number of times I have not felt fed by the church, it's amazing. I sort of, I've been, been to the service, and I've sort of been, the Sunday service and sometimes the midweek meeting, and I've come away and I've sort of, I've still been hungry. It's sort of like throwing a piece of bread out to someone who's starving, and you just get a little piece of bread, and it's just enough to keep you alive, but it's not really enough to nourish you. And I've been around churches like that for the best part of 50 years. Oh yes, you get some nourish. Yes, you get some um, good fellowship and friendship and practical support. Granted, but very often I have come away feeling hungry, feeling as though I've not had the spiritual food that I've been looking for, or and sort of I've done that, and I'd say that's not that's been the case for best part of 50 years. I sort of, yeah, well, look, it's sort of just it's just enough to stop you starving, but not much more. And you talk to the preachers and the teachers, and you say, well, look, I learnt this in this situation. I went to this workshop and I learnt about this. I read this book and this is what I learnt from that, or this conference or this workshop or whatever it was. And because I've gone round and sort of being like this starving woman who's sort of going everywhere, trying to get fed, because I've not felt that I've been fed by that. Hmm, I've just ended up that, and I look around. I mean, look around at that, and there's sort of people satisfied with the little bit that they've got. People being fed crumbs and they're satisfied. Well, there was a time when there was about over a 2 year, over a 2 year period. I went away for 20 weekends over a 2 year period. So like, um, there was, I think it was like a 2 year course, and we had a month off during the summer and a month off at Christmas. I think it worked out to be, and it was a month, 10, 10 workshops a month. And those workshops were the other end of the country, with quite a different group of people, and I learnt a lot. As a result. And I look at other people and say, oh, well, we just do. Well, we read this, and I'm thinking, um, yes. Oh, we just do what we just sort of listen to. So we just sort of listen to this teacher, and we there, and you think, oh, I don't know whether it's just me being so absolutely ravenous all the time. I mean, you look at me. The day before I recorded this, I spent 2 hours on one Zoom call, with sort of feeding off one thing about prayer, and another. And then half an hour later, I started a second Zoom call with with a totally different group of people, um, being fed and nourished in a different way, and a different thing. But that's normal. That's normal for me. I mean, it's like going to back, like going to there now, sort of getting nourished more, and I sort of that I find I do find it hard on there. Um, Maybe that's why I've struggled in church in recent years, and there, because I've done different things. My background is different on there, and I spent so much time um, feasting on a whole load of good stuff that they're absolutely surprised by, by some of the things that I come out with I talk about, because because I've fed so much. I've been had so much good food on there. So, what was I going back to with this chapter 34? You see, it talks about the church, well, it talks about the shepherds. In my case, I suspect the church ministers here. I'm making a comment there. Not looking after the flock, leaving them diseased and weak and sick, and not dealing with those who are crippled, and not binding up the broken, and not sorting issues out. But then what does it go on to say? That they were scattered. They weren't cared for by the shepherds, they were scattered. And when they were scattered, they became food for wild beasts. Oh, heaven help us. And the sheep wandered through the mountains and wandered through the hills, and they were scattered all over the face of the earth. And no one went out to look for them. No one there. They were the lost sheep. They were God's people. They were God's people, but the shepherds weren't looking after them, and they were just left wandering. Oh, that, I don't know. That just sort of gets to my heart somehow. But then it goes on this one, talking about God's sheep, i.e. the ones that those he appointed as shepherds weren't really looking after, becoming food for the beasts of the field because there was no shepherd. And they didn't search for them, but the shepherds fed themselves and didn't feed the flock. Whoops. There are times when I look around the church and I think, I wonder whether that's the case there in some congregations. The sheep just not being fed. Oh dear, it's heartbreaking actually. And do you know what? Because the sheep don't know any better. You see, it's like if you've been brought up saying that the biggest meal of the day is baked beans on toast. You will always expect you'll think, oh well, that's the biggest meal they're ever going to get is baked beans on toast. Then if somebody says, oh well, the big meal is bowl of wholemeal soup, roast meat, roast beef, Yorkshire puddings, peas, carrots, gravy, broccoli, and probably a dash of horseradish sauce, plus and followed by rhubarb crumble and custard, or and you're told that is a big meal. Oh, really? That's a three course meal. Be honest, some of my favourites from years gone by are those ones. That because you've always expected the baked beans and toast, being given the soup and the roast and the roast dinner and the crumble. Oh, that's different. That's something a bit different on there. That's that's a curious one, because you're so used to being given the baked beans that having a 3-course meal, even though it's a relatively cheap meal, like homemade soup, a roast dinner, and a crumble made from the rhubarb in the garden. That seems different. That seems wrong, because you don't know what good food is, because all you've ever had is baked beans on toast. That's well on there, and there are many who've lived on baked who in the church who've lived on baked beans on toast for years and have not been fed the homemade soup, the roast dinner, and the rhubarb crumble. Partly because the shepherds have not necessarily known themselves how to make the soup and roast the dinner and make the rhubarb crumble. Of course, in the case of the rhubarb, they might not have planted the rhubarb in their own garden, so they won't be able to pull up the rhubarb stems to be able to use in the rhubarb crumble. Yes, interesting analogy that one is. You can take that one away, round a little way. But it also says that although God is not happy with shepherds that don't feed his flock, it also says that he is the one that'll go and rescue them. The sheep don't need to worry about this. God's got it under control. He is going to rescue them. He's going to sort it out. Of course, they've got to be sure that they want to be rescued on there. I mean, you won't do anything if they don't want it. Like me, because I was hungry and I wanted to be fed, um, all these things, with all this extra teaching. Yeah, he sort of said, "Oh, you want this? Oh, well, look, I'll show you where it is. Yeah, you can have this. Oh, that's going on there. Oh, you want it? You want it? I'll organize it so you have it. Um, as I'm hungry for it, it it sort of it says it sort of means that if I'm hungry and I want it, it sort of it fits in with that idea of our free will of it work God giving it because it's my free will because I want it on there, and it's not, and sort of is wanting and asking and saying, oh, is that can I have something better than that? Oh, of course you can, child. You can have that. You're hungry for it. Yes, you can have something else. You can have something extra. You can have something more. You can do that. You can have that extra. But you've got to be hungry for it. You've got to ask for it. You've got to want it. Because I'll not violate your free will. You've got to want it. And if so and so over there says that it's wrong to have that, and you believe them, well, I'm sorry. If you believe them that it's wrong, well, how can I give you something that you believe is wrong? I can't do that because that violates your free will. On there, and what I can do for you then is sort of work with you to say, yes, is this right, and I'll have what's right on there. But unless you let your free will is seen in your hunger for something, you won't get things. You've got to no, you've got to be hungry for something for it to happen. You've got to ask for it, and that hunger will lead you to ask. And when you ask it, you're given. But you're not automatically given, because to be automatically given would violate your free will. You see what I mean? At least that's my reasoning for that. If you see where I hope you can see where I'm coming from with that. But it says on here that those sheep that are looking for, so verse 12, the shepherd seeks out for the sheep in the day that he, and we're looking around the sheep that are scattered, and there, and he'll rescue them in all the places where they've been scattered in the day of clouds and thick darkness. Well, quite a few of us think that the current circumstances are days of cloud and thick darkness, or rather, rather there are those who say that things are getting cloudy now, and it's not going to be long before it's thick darkness. It's almost as if people are my sense is that people are thinking, well, it's sort of twilight now. It's on the way to getting dark. It's going dark, but it's not as dark as it's going to be on there, because when people start thinking, well, uh, you know, the economists are those sort of, well, those looking at the economy are saying, well, yes, we're in recession at the moment, but it's not going to be long before we hit an economic crash, and it's not going to be long before we think things get worse. It's almost that sense of being in the twilight with the darkness on its way on there. But God rescues people from the day of from the day of clouds and from the day of thick darkness. Well, hey, there is a plan. He has a plan, and in this verse 13, he promises to bring. So he promises to gather up his people and bring them to a safe place. A safe place where he can feed them. He can make sure that they're watered. He can make sure that they're well cared for. And he can give them all that they need. So much given so much that of what they need is that instead they're sort of, it talks about them being so well cared for that they're actually able to lie down in the good pasture. In other words, they've had so much good stuff that they need to stop, lie down, and digest all the good stuff. And they're safe enough to do that because they're being protected, and they've had so much good stuff. They've eaten, so there is sort of like that situation of, you've had a good meal and you need to sit down and have a rest and digest it, and really, and and let and, let- and let and let things settle, and literally have a rest. It's like having the nap after the nap after lunch, really. um and yeah, he actually says that he will look after his people so much, they'll take them out of the wilderness, bring them to somewhere where they're well fed, and then make them so well fed that they need to sit down and have a break. And while they're sitting down, he's going to look after them and protect them uh, on there. And he's going to look after those. You see, there's so you know we think about the shepherds guiding the flock and saying where they're going to find good food, and yet you look at this passage and you say, well, look, okay, the shepherds have not done so much of a good job. The shepherds could have done a better job. The sheep have wandered, the sheep have strayed, they're doing things that they shouldn't really do. But don't worry, I've got it all in hand. I'm going to sort out. I'm going to look after the lost sheep. I'm going to gather them up. I've got my ways and means of doing that. You know, there are many people who have fallen out with the church over the years. There've been times when I have fallen out with a particular church. Sometimes I can think of 2 times. I think of 2 times when that's really caused me a lot of grief. And looking back, um, it was, as much as reason as anything, is a lack of understanding on both sides, and what was I was understanding what they were saying was absolutely ridiculous on both occasions, which is why I ended up getting hurt, and why I ended up wandering away from both those fellowships. I've never wandered away from God. On there, that's been a constant, but I found it a struggle to, let's say, some shepherds have not been as well behaved as they could have been, and have not been appreciative of my situation as they should have been. Let's put it like that. Um, and because they've not appreciated my circumstances, they have said some pretty stupid things, and yes, made it very difficult for me to trust them. And I say it's not once; it's not just once. It's happened. At least I can think of two very obvious occasions when that has happened. He's saying that God has a hold on his sheep. Even if the shepherds have made a mess of things, God will look after his sheep. If he appoints people to be his shepherds, but he will look after them. Um, on there, and even if his sheep, even if his shepherds and even if some of his sheep sort of bully others and trample on them and push them around, and do things wrong, he'll look after all his flock, even those who are bullied and pushed around by others. I mean, like me, I was told. I mean, I found myself in some crazy situations, like the time when I was told off for not stabbing my husband with a pair of scissors. Yes, you heard that right. I was in the wrong for not stabbing. Yeah, he asked me to stab him with a pair of scissors. I said no, and apparently saying no and being disobedient to my husband was wrong. Yes, um, that is what you might call a bullying shepherd. And there, yes, I've had a few adventures on my journey, but God, look, but the beautiful thing is that God looks after his sheep. Even if the shepherds fail, even if they make a mess of things, it's his sheep, it's his flock. If those appointed for him don't make sense, okay, there. But he will look after them no matter what. And that to me is an amazing thing was I picked up from the rest of that chapter on there. But you see, the idea of the manifesto that's not for wimps was that the I was looking at it from a point of view of there were so many things to do from the community and there that the church wasn't exactly doing what it should be doing. In fact, I was looking at it. The whole premise of the book is that there's a lot to do on there, but the church isn't doing it. There's a lot of, and it was almost as if, yeah, you're doing this, but you're not doing what you're not. You're not looking after your own sheep, and worse still, you're not looking after the, and you're not looking after your own sheep, and then you're not helping your own sheep look after those outside, and the whole thing is a complete mess on there. And that was there. So the focus of the book is, yeah, the church is not doing what it should be doing, partly because it was trying to do things in a different way. And there, you see, one of my other books is The Faithful Ladies Can Transform Society, and that basically, the focus on that is on Proverbs 31, where the ideal wife goes out, starts building a business, uses her money wisely, and then she has the spare cash to be able to go out and do good works on there. Now, unfortunately, many in the church say, right, sort of skip the first couple of stages and tell people to give, when they haven't got any spare money to give. Oh, and if you haven't got any spare money to give, well, you better give your time, because if you don't, if you've got to, we've got to do more, do more, do more, do more, do more. Um, hmm. I'll tell you tomorrow what I think about that. Um, it's not very complimentary, but I decided I was going to make this only 20 minutes, but I've done a somewhat Susan ramble with this and made it just about an hour. Okay, I will catch up with you later, when tomorrow I will be looking at so next step on this book, another, which is where what else the church should be doing rather than what it has been doing. Anyway, bye for now.